Good morning. I've had a dozen people ask me this morning, give or take, was I ready? I'm ready. I'm just so glad to see you. And we have a good crowd for class, and we have people who are visiting, some of whom I know very well, and I'm just so glad to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I hope it'll be a good week for us. Now, last February, I resigned my pulpit at West Huntsville, where I had been preaching for 22 years. And, I really love West Huntsville. If you ever get a chance to come, I hope you'll come and visit us. But I started working for the Gospel Broadcasting Network full time. That's what I do. So I travel and I preach and I do programming for the network. And I went to my elders and I said, you know, I'm 66 years old and Gospel Broadcasting asked me to come and do this. I'd really like to try this. And the caveat is that I don't want to leave West Huntsville because I really love this church, and I promise if you'll let me do this, I'll be really nice to the next preacher. And they considered that and said yes, and so my family and I still are members at West Huntsville. If you'll please, before we begin our lesson, I just want to tell you about one of the projects that we're working on right now. I was baptized when I was 13. My father was a gospel preacher, as was his father before him, and my son after me. That's all that we know how to do. And I was 13, and my father baptized me, and after that, he gave me a copy of Now That I'm a Christian. Y'all remember that? I don't know. I guess it's still in print. I'm not sure, but it was a pamphlet about so big and a little booklet, and it was really very good. The problem with it was, the weakness, if you please, is that it was one size fits all. Now, that was okay, because it was fundamentals. It was rudimentary things that every new Christian needed to know. The thing that we could do better is this. You know that people who come to Christ, people who obey the gospel, are from lots of different religious backgrounds. Isn't that true? Right now, I've been studying for some time now with a gentleman who's an agnostic, and he's a friend of mine now. And we're working through some things. I don't know how long it'll take, but I tell him often, one day you'll be a Christian. You'll be a Christian. We'll see. But now there's a difference between somebody who comes to Christ from atheism and somebody who comes to Christ from Methodism or Presbyterian or Episcopal or just not a church at all. I believe in God, but I'm just not involved in any church at all. People come to Christ from various moral backgrounds. You might have someone who comes to Christ as a homosexual, repenting of that and coming into the Lord, right? Or maybe someone, I don't know, use your imagination. So what if we do a video series from Gospel Broadcasting in which we begin with the rudiments, those fundamental things that every new Christian needs, but then after that we create videos and have people come in to the studio who came from these different backgrounds. I have a close friend, a wonderful gospel preacher, and his wife was reared a Catholic. I mean, devout Catholic, and she's very knowledgeable about Catholicism. And so the two of them are going to come in, and I'm just going to interview them and say, now tell me what you went through. What kinds of challenges did you face to become a member of the Church of Christ? What issues, and what was the hardest thing you had to overcome to leave Catholicism to be a member of the Church of Christ? And the idea is that a person who obeys the gospel can pick and choose from these videos and hopefully find some things that will be beneficial. So anyway, I'm terribly excited about it, and I hope if you haven't exposed yourself to the Gospel Broadcasting Network, I hope you'll do that. It's free. Everything is free. The Gospel Broadcasting Network is funded by churches who give to it and individuals who want to support this kind of work. But we never, ever, 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 that sounds like my 6-year-old granddaughter, but we never, ever, ever solicit any kind of funds on the air. We never do that. We're never going to do that, and you can understand why. All right. This is going to be about the family. This week we're going to talk in every lesson something about the family. And I don't know a particular reason, but I chose this one to begin with. I had an invitation to come and speak recently for a lectureship, and they assigned to me Proverbs 22 and verse 6, with which you're probably familiar. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he'll not depart from it. And when I got the assignment, I thought, well, this won't take much time to prepare for because I'm pretty familiar with that. Now, we can make application and so forth. And really, I thought that I'll do some study because I've got to decide, am I going to present this as a hard, fast rule? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. Is that a hard, fast rule? Or is it a general principle? Now, where I came down was, it's a general principle. And I think this verse has been a great comfort and a great heartache to different ones. Sometimes it's a great comfort because if your child is 22 years old and has left the faith, and you raise that boy in the Lord, then this is offering comfort to say, by and by, what you've planted in him will come back to him. Well, I think that's true. I think that's got to be true. The place where young people, you believe this is right? The place that children have the greatest chance of growing to be devout and faithful Christians in their lives is if they grow up in a home where that's trained early on. They don't remember a time when they weren't part of the group, the church. That's the best. However, in this room, and I don't know most of you personally, I expect that wasn't the case with all of you. Some of you didn't grow up in a Christian home, and you learned the gospel later, and you obeyed the gospel, and now you're walking in Christ. Praise God. Well, that's that. So sometimes it was a great comfort to people whose 20-year-old son or daughter left the faith, and they think, I put this stuff in them. I'm really hoping that it will click in soon. And then it was a great pain to some people because they get to be 45 years old and they haven't been in the Lord forever. They never obeyed the gospel. And it is just, it's devastating to think that I don't see any possibility that my son is ever going to be in the Lord. I don't see it. He's not interested in that. He doesn't care about that. And then you look at this verse and you say, so obviously we messed up. I don't know where we messed up. We love the Lord every minute of that boy's life, and we did all that we knew how to do to put the Lord in his life, in his heart, and we failed. So there's somewhere, and don't you know a lot of parents live with that? All right. I use that to preface where I'm going with this. I'm going to talk in a few minutes about Proverbs 22 and verse 6, and I took that deep dive, and I went to every word, into the history, the original language of each word. I called my friend Justin Rogers. Justin Rogers is Dean of Biblical Studies. I think that's his title at Freed-Hardeman. And he is, in my opinion, our greatest Hebrew scholar in our brotherhood. And I really have a great respect for him. But I called him and I said, Justin, I want you to walk with me through this verse, each word, each original word, especially this one, and tell me, am I missing something? Is there something more here? And I'm going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But let's shift gears. When I made this speech about Proverbs 22 and 6, I was studying about that time on the subject of gentle parenting. And my, the two just really came together, and I want to show you how. Do you understand what, I won't ask for a show of hands, but many of you perhaps have heard the term gentle parenting. It doesn't mean what you think if you haven't been exposed to it. You think, well, every parent ought to want to be gentle. I mean, isn't that kind of intuitive? But it means a great deal more than that. And it has gained, over the last decade, it's just gained a lot of popularity. And because of some of the things that it stands for, really the heart of gentle parenting, we must oppose it. And we must oppose it because of what the Bible has to say, and that's what I want to do this morning. All right, so let's introduce gentle parenting. I think this may be the best way. We'll talk about it, but I want to show you some quotes of people who publicly advocate gentle parenting. This is Kimberly Zapata in parenting.com. Gentle parenting is a means of parenting without shame, blame, or punishment. It centers on partnership as both parents and children have a say in this collaborative style. All right, there's your first introduction. It means what you think. Instead of being a parent in the sense that you and I would typically think about, and maybe you would say old-fashioned parenting, I'm okay with that, but where the mom is the mom and the dad is the dad, and what they say is going to be obeyed. This is more of a negotiating kind of friendship parenting. Here's Dr. Estrella in the Cleveland Clinic. Instead of focusing on punishment and reward, gentle parenting, I'm that person. So how do you bring a child up? And I would say that you use punishment and reward about behavior. Anyway, instead of focusing on punishment and reward, gentle parenting focuses on improving a child's self-awareness and understanding of their own behavior. The idea is to be more like a coach for your kid rather than a punisher. Here's Jessica Winter in the New Yorker. In its broadest outlines, gentle parenting centers on acknowledging a child's feelings and the motivations behind challenging behavior, as opposed to correcting the behavior itself. The gentle parent holds firm boundaries, gives a child choices instead of orders, and eschews rewards, punishments, and threats. No sticker charts, no timeouts, no, quote, I will turn this car around right now. I think, you've heard that before. Okay, I remember. Instead of issuing commands like put on your shoes, the parent strives to understand why a child is acting out in the first place. So, for example, what's up, honey? You don't want to put your shoes on? Or perhaps narrates the problem. You're playing with your trains because putting on your shoes doesn't feel good. Sarah Uckwell Smith. In all of my work, I talk about long-term goals versus short-term goals. Quick fixes that change behavior today versus focusing on who your child will be as a teen or an adult. I resent that. Because that's nonsense. How in the world do you influence the future if you don't influence today? How do you reach into the future except incrementally in each day that you raise that child? Gentle parenting is very much focused on the latter. So let's skip these early days. Let's don't correct them. Let's negotiate with them. Let's be friends with them in anticipation of them having great respect for authority in life when they're older. Really? Gentle parenting is very much focused on the latter. It's not about creating a calm, compliant, obedient, or robot children. I resent that too. Of course, we don't want robot children. Anybody in this room hoping for that for your kids or grandchildren? Well, that's not right. No, nobody wants that. Anyway, it's about raising individuals who will be happy and emotionally healthy adults. Now, I was studying gentle parenting and understanding it, trying to understand it. I don't think that the idea is new, that the term is in recent times. The idea, of course, I think has been going on a long, long time. So in studying that, I got this assignment about Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he'll not depart from it. And what you have to realize is that the Proverbs are not just like Galatians or Ephesians. We're so blessed with having good access to the original Greek and Hebrew texts as well. But you go to Ephesians or Galatians or whatever in the New Testament, and you typically will have a Greek word for every word, or maybe there will be a little clump of words, and there's one Greek word that translates that way, and we use that in our preaching, and it's very valuable. The Proverbs are a little more challenging. Of course, it's in Hebrew, and sometimes it's required that more liberty be taken by the translator. And that's what happened here. Now, train up a child translates, I'm going to give you a literal translation of that term. It means dedicate the boy. The word train up a child, train up, comes from the same Hebrew word as Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is the feast of dedication. When you would dedicate a house, you would use this word. It means to dedicate the house. So 1 Kings 8:63, it's used. So the king and all the children of Israel dedicated the house of the Lord. That's the word. Dedicate the house of the Lord. Train up a child is a fine translation then. And I can imagine us using it. What are you doing in the rearing of your children? I'm dedicating them to the Lord. I am training them up for that purpose. Psalm 127 is, as arrows are in the hand of a mighty man's sword, children of the youth. And so what I'm doing is I'm aiming that arrow, I'm restraining that arrow, and one day they're going to be grown and I'm going to release that arrow. That's what I'm doing. I'm dedicating them to the Lord, and I assume that that's the purpose of everybody as a parent or grandparent in this room. So train up a child in the way he should go. Now here's where it gets very interesting. The words should go are supplied by the translator. I understand why the translators did this. They did it to make the verse make sense in English. I just believe that they took a liberty here that was not correct. Train up a child in the way he should go. So if you take out the supplied part, should go, it comes down to this. The verse literally says, train up a child in the way he, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Well, that, on its face in English doesn't make a lot of sense. But the only modifier for the way is the word he. What way are we talking about? And the translators put in that he should go. That must make sense. And I understand that logic. I just want to dig a little deeper. Train up a child in the way he, and when he's old, he won't depart from it. As you see on the screen, a literal translation is, on the mouth of his way. It's a Hebrew idiom, I guess, meaning according to his way. Now let that soak in. Train up a child according to his own way, according to his own wishes. And when he is old, he'll not depart from it. I do not believe that this verse was intended to be a comfort to parents. I believe it was intended to be a caution to parents against the philosophy of gentle parenting. If you train up a child in the way he wants, that is, you're always interested in his own feelings, and that's what largely determines what he will do. He's saying, he won't lose it when he's an adult. If you train him without a sense of authority as a child, he'll not have a sense of authority when he is an adult. Now, here's the New American Standard footnote. The phrase could be rendered, according to his way. Train up a child according to his way. And when he is old, he won't depart from it. Barnes said, in part, look at the last part that I've underlined, closest possible study of each child's temperament and the adaptation of his way of life to that. 9 verses when you're trying to decide how you'd best translate Proverbs 22:6. I want to remind you that 9 verses later, in verse 15, he says, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him. I throw this out for your consideration. And maybe you'll find it interesting to do some more research on this verse yourself. Train up a child according to his own will, and when he is old, he will not depart from it, is an accurate representation of the heart of gentle parenting today. And that's why, along with some other passages, gentle parenting ought to be rejected. Now I want you to go to Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews, the 12th chapter. Let's start with verse 5. This is even a more important passage because it's part of the New Testament, and you and I live our lives under the New Testament law. The proverb, I think, is very interesting, and so I put it in just for your consideration because I think it's very compelling. But Hebrews chapter 12, beginning in verse 5, is a critical passage today in reference to parenting philosophies. Now, let me preface it by saying this. I'm fascinated by the fact that in the passage you have a comparison between dads and God. But it's backwards from what you would assume. What you and I would assume is that the Hebrews writer would say, dads, be like God. Imitate God in these ways. It's not what it says. What it says is, dads, God is like you. God's like you. I'm going to read it, and you'll see that that's what it is saying. And so you read that, and you think, well, he's presupposing something. He's presupposing. The Hebrews writer is presupposing that these Jewish Christians, by and large, overwhelmingly, the dads are good dads. They're serious dads. It must be culturally the case that overall these dads are getting it right. And so he's saying, you know how your dad is? God's like that. That's the way this reads. So let's start in verse 5. I'm in Hebrews chapter 12 and verse 5. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as to sons. Now he's encouraging these Jewish Christians to be faithful. Don't give up on your faith. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you're rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens, and scourges every son whom he receives. Now, we're going to read down through verse 11, and I want you to pay attention to all the times this word chastening is used. Now, if you look up this word in the Greek, and what you'll find is that it's not merely spanking, but it includes spanking. Corporal punishment is a great big discussion today. And some people equate all corporal punishment with child abuse. Well, that simply isn't true. Ladies and gentlemen, child abuse, whether it's physical or spiritual or sexual or emotional, child abuse is from hell. Any disagreement with that? No, we intuitively know that. We know that's right. But now listen to this old preacher. Spanking, delivered in appropriate measures at appropriate times, is from heaven. That's what the Bible teaches. And that's what Hebrews 12 teaches. And he's saying God's like your dad. So you have these examples of the word chastening. Verse 5, verse 6, verse 7, verse 8, verse 11. It's just filled up with it. The chastening of the Lord isn't just spanking. It would be, in addition to that, nurturing. It's an idea of corporal punishment in the context of nurturing. If you think about spanking in an atmosphere that is void of love, you're going to mess up. That's no good. It's got to be in correlation with the fact that you love them, and they know that you love them, and you show that in so many ways. And this week we'll talk more about how to show love to children, but in that atmosphere, that's where spanking is so beneficial. I would give some cautions about spanking. You shouldn't slap a child's face. God gave you a place to spank a child, and it's not on his face, right? My grandfather used to spank my father with a razor strap. You know what a razor strap is? You've seen them on the side of barber chairs, and they're pieces of leather about that. They just drop the blade of the razor. And there were I have it. I have the strap, and it's actually two. And I guess one was a finer grain than the other, and so you could hone that blade for shaving a man. Well, I would ask my father. He's deceased now, but I would ask him. Now, I'm leery about this. Were you ever abused? Do you consider what happened to Bill? No, he said, no, I was never abused. I never was. But he did use that to spank me. Well, okay. Now, I'll admit to you that's a little bit hard for me because I just can't imagine spanking my kids with a razor strap. But, different world, whatever. I always thought it was a good thing just to use my hand. And I have grandchildren that I'm helping raise now, and I can tell you that's what I always use, nothing more than that. And the reason why is just Glenn's logic. You don't have to follow my logic about this, but my logic is that if I use my hand, I know how much I'm giving. I know just what I'm giving. I've got a control over that because I can feel it in my hand, right? And this passage, Hebrews 12, is taking for granted that good fathers practice spanking. And they do it in a context of nurturing and training and loving those babies enough to die for them. I would like to believe that everybody, and I do, that everybody in this room, daddies, who are fathers or grandfathers, fall into that category, that you love your offspring like that. And in that context, you correct them. in that context, you correct. I don't think spanking is something that we do the first time a child does something wrong. It seems to me the more logical thing is that when he does something wrong, but he's never been taught, you don't spank him then. He doesn't know what he's doing wrong. You'd tell him first. You say, here's the right way to do that. Spanking ought to be reserved for the time when his will is different from yours and he chooses to do his will over yours. And then you spank him to say, that's not how we're going to do that. I want you to remember this. And if you ever choose to do that again, I've got more spanking where that came from, so don't do it, right? There's a blessing in that. I don't know how you were raised, but I'm telling you that's a biblical blessing. I want my grandchildren to grow up to revere God and respect God. And the fact of the matter is, what a child knows best about God is Mama and Daddy. And sometimes Grandmama and Grandpapa. They call me Papa. I had two grandfathers, and the one that I felt closest to I called Papa. And so it stuck on my grandchildren. I must have influenced that, I guess. But I tell you what, there's something mighty sweet about a little child coming up to your britches leg and jerking on it and then holding up those two little hands and saying, Papa, Papa. Ezra is about to turn 11, and I would hold him, and sometimes he would just reach up and stroke my face. Whatever that boy wants, I'm going to give it to him if I've got it. Papa, Papa. That's the context in which spanking is most effective. They know how much I love them. They know. We spend time together. We do things together. As a papa, I'm different from a daddy. And that's a challenge. I preach to myself all the time about it. But when I was a daddy, I didn't understand things that I understand now. When I was a dad, I would force myself. If you needed to do something to repair something around the house, you need to put a kit in a toilet, for example. And you men, you know how to do that, and maybe some of you ladies do, but it doesn't take long. Probably, 20 minutes, you could, maybe less. You could have the whole job finished. No, it's not a hard job, but an essential job. And I could do it in good 20 minutes. I could do it anytime. Or I could bring Caleb in and have him help me in 45 minutes, right? And so I don't know why God didn't give us our children at the old age of life, because we've made our livings and we're kind of laid back and we're more relaxed and all of those kinds of things. And wouldn't that make better sense? But that's not what he did. What he did is to give them to young people. And young people are working hard and you're busy and you got schedules and all of that's true. And what you have to do, we're going to talk some more about this, but what you have to do is take time with those kids. Don't you fail in this. Don't you do that. And if you choose to do that, I recommend you buy some stock in the Kleenex company because you're going to need a great deal of it. You'll pay for that, and you'll pay for it in pain when they're older. You've got to spend time with them. You've got to do that, and I think I understand that better as a papa. All right, here we are, Hebrews 12, verse 5. Well, let's drop down now to verse 6. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens and scourges every son whom he receives. It's punishment, chastening, spanking is connected to love. If you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. For what son is he whom a father does not chasten? He's like your dad. God is like your dad. And you know why your dad chastens you when you were a kid? It's because he loved you. That's what that verse says. And God's like that. But if you are without chastening, of which all are partakers, then are you illegitimate. I'm reading from the New King James. The Old King James uses the word bastard. You understand what that word means? You are illegitimate and not sons. What is the point? The point is that a father who would abandon his children will not be the one who will be doing what this passage enjoins. He's left them. He's not interested in nurturing them and caring for them and training them and chastening them and all the things involved in good parenting. He's just abandoned them. And if you are without the chastisement of the Lord, it would say the same thing about you. He's abandoned you. But God does chasten us, doesn't He? Can you think of ways that God chastens His children? Let's make a quick list. I don't know, this is probably not exhaustive, but I can think of ways that God chastens us, for which I'm very thankful. Would you say that gospel preaching is a way that God chastens His children? Did you ever hear John preach and then you walk out and get in your car and you think, oh, that really hurt. That passage got me. I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing. Or I'm failing to do something that I should be doing. And sometimes there's chastening involved in gospel preaching. Preach the whole counsel of God. Sometimes, that's going to be true. Is that good for us? What about the elders of the church? The elders of the church are charged with the responsibility of watching for our souls, Hebrews 13:17, and they're going to have to give an account for that. And sometimes it means correcting, doesn't it? The elders sit down at the kitchen table and say, Brother Fred, I don't know if there's a Fred here, I just made that up. Brother Fred, we're worried about you because we've observed this going on in your life and we're very concerned and we really need for you to correct this. You can't be pleasing to God and live like this. And you can fill in the blanks about what kinds of things that might be. But godly shepherds, I like to call them kitchen table elders. And a lot of elders in the country, in our congregations, are never going to be kitchen table elders because they just don't understand shepherding. But shepherding produces this in men. And it's part of God's chastening of His children. I would say that another example would be the chastening that we have just naturally in the congregation. There's a certain accountability involved in being part of an assembly like this one, a congregation like this one. Is that a true statement? It should be true. Don't we hold each other accountable? I don't mean that we just boss each other around or criticize. I don't think that. But I do think that just in conversation with one another, I know that if I participated in some kinds of behavior, that my brothers and sisters aren't going to approve that. They wouldn't go along with that. And that reality motivates me to want to not do the wrong thing. And the fact is, sometimes one brother, especially if he's got a beard like that one, might say to another brother, I love you, I love you, might say to another brother, Cody, I was at Cody's house last night, might say to another brother, I don't think you really ought to go to that place where you've been going. I don't think that's right. I wish you wouldn't do that. You think those kinds of conversations sometimes happen? Or maybe two ladies and they're having some coffee together and talking, and one of them espouses some kind of an idea that's just not right. And the other one might say gently to her, I love you, but I just can't go along with that. I don't think that's right. The Bible, what the Bible says over in 2, and I wish you wouldn't do that. What's happening? Accountability. Now, what this passage is saying is that God chastens His children, and you shouldn't be angry about that. I know that sometimes people could do it in a wrong way, so setting that aside, don't be angry about that, because if God didn't chasten you, then it's just like you're illegitimate and not sons, but you're sons and daughters of God, right? Let's read on. Verse 10. Now here's the caveat about God the Father and your dad. For they, your dads, all of our dads, they indeed for a few days chastened us as they deemed best. The weakness is that we're human. And did you ever, when your kids were little, did you ever spank your child and then after that learn there were some mitigating circumstances that you didn't know and you shouldn't have spanked him? Did it ever happen to anybody? Probably. Or maybe you scolded him for something or her for something, got on to him, and then you learned something you didn't know. Yeah, I'm seeing some heads bobbing up and down. I think that we have done that. And then we have to say, look, honey, come here. I'm sorry. Dad, I didn't know that. And so will you forgive me? I shouldn't have gotten on to you, but I didn't know that. And then children are very forgiving, and you hug, and they know that you're a human being. All right, that's what this verse is saying. For they, your dads, indeed for a few days chastened us as they deemed best, But He, God, for our profit, God always gets it right, that we might be partakers of His holiness. Now, no chastening seems to be joyous for the present. Oh, I think He's thinking about my father and his spankings. You know what? I didn't like that. It's not joyous for the present. Ready for this? I'm telling you, what I'm about to read is a condemnation of this theory of gentle parenting. It's grievous. That's how I interpreted mine. Then, nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. It's about the now. It's about respecting us now. You know why you obey your mama? It's because she's your mama. That's it. You know why you obey your daddy? Because he's your daddy. You don't have to go beyond that. That's it. You know why you obey God as an adult? Because He's God. That's it. It's a sense of learning authority, and you learn it best from your mom and dad. And it includes some chastening. Now look at verse 9. 2 critical objectives to chastening in the rearing and nurturing of your children. Verse 9, it's about reverence and respect. And I would say that's the short-term goal. It's about the today goal. But then verse 11 gets you the long-term goal and says it's about the peaceable fruit of righteousness. What do you want for your kids? I'm asking you, what is your definition of true success for your kids? Now, you ought to be able to say this in your sleep. Just put this, ingrain this so deeply in your mind that you can say it without thinking about it. True success for your kids is living your life and going to heaven. True failure, no matter what else is true, is living your life and not going to heaven. Now get that straight about your children, and you know what? The 1,000 other decisions that you've got to make are going to fall right underneath that. You'll get them, and you'll get them right, because our goal, chances are when your children leave this world, I hope this will be true, when they leave the world, you'll have long ago died. And what I want to put in them is while I've got the chance, I want to put the love of God in them, and I want to put the discipline and truth of God in them, because I want them, after I'm gone, I want to live inside of them, at least my influence for Christ, so that they'll live their lives in faithfulness, and one day, when their time is o'er, that they will be right in the sight of God, and then we get to spend eternity together. You're very kind to listen. God bless you. Let's take our break before worship.